What's up, booktube? Welcome back. My name is Laura if you're new here, and today we're talking about some witch books to read during the Halloween season. This is the fourth and final part of my October mini-series where I'm recommending a bunch of books from the different kind of categories of paranormal fantasy. These are my favorite ways to get into the spooky Halloween season. I love all those vampires, ghosts, and witches and all that good stuff. My other three videos will be linked down below for you guys if you want to check them out. But today we are going into witches, and this is my biggest list, so strap in because we are going to be here for a little while. So let's just get right into it. Starting with an older one that I used to be obsessed with when I was definitely too young to be reading it, but that is the Wicked series by Nancy Holder and Debbie, I don't know how to pronounce that. I was so obsessed. Like, look at the spine of this book, look how yellowed those pages are. I've had this book since I think 2007, I think it was. I was reading this in the 5th or 6th grade, one of the two. Again, way too young to be reading this series. I remember having to wait for the last book in the series to come out, and I was so desperate to get to it. I read the first book so many times, I don't even remember how many times. In terms of like synopsis, I don't even really like remember what it's about. I just know that I was obsessed with it, and it was such a good series back in the day. I have no clue if it holds up anymore. But from what I remember, this one follows a girl whose parents were just killed in a freak accident, and she goes to live with her aunt. And from there, weird things start happening. She realizes that any wish she whispers to her cat happens to come true. She also has this strange attraction to this boy that she barely knows. And after a little while of living in this town, she and her cousins realize that they are part of some very dark witch legacy that she had no idea about. This series was so much fun back in the day. I kind of want to reread it, but I'm a little scared too because I don't know if it would hold up now. And I kind of want to just like keep it in this joyful part of my childhood memories because like what if it sucks now? It might, but like back in the day I loved this series so much. Next up is one of my more recent reads, and that is Payback's a Witch by Lana Harper. I got an advanced copy of this one from NetGalley, and I did do a full review for it on my channel, so I will link that for you guys down below. But this one is an adult rom-com with a witchy twist. The like main key points of this book: there is a magical tournament, it's a revenge story, and it is a sapphic romance, and there's witches. What more could you possibly need? I love magical tournaments, I love revenge plots, I love sapphic romances, so obviously this was a good book for me. It was such a cute read, the atmosphere was incredible, I loved all of the like witchy lore in it, and it was just such a good book. And if you'd like to hear more thoughts, go check out my video on that one. And then we've got Magic for Liars by Sarah Gailey. Y'all know that I love Sarah Gailey. They're one of my favorite authors. It's been a while since I read one of their books. They're such a good author. Magic for Liars is about a private investigator who is down on her luck, and she has a sister that she's estranged from because the sister has magic but the main character does not, and her sister is now a teacher at a magical school for witchy teenagers. Meanwhile, she is a struggling private investigator, and so they don't get along because there's some like major jealousy involved. But one day the principal of the magical school that the sister teaches at comes to her for help and says that one of the teachers at their school has been murdered, but the police are ruling it as a suicide, but people who know her know that this was not a suicide. So it's a murder mystery with a magical twist to it, some sibling rivalry, and a budding romance as well. Like, there's so much happening in this book, and it was such a good time. I went the audiobook route for this one, and I definitely recommend it. The narrator did an incredible job at capturing the essence of this character. She has this like really dark, sultry kind of voice, and it was perfect for the character and great for the atmosphere as well. This was such a fun book, and I highly recommend it, or really anything by Sarah Gailey, but if you're looking for witches, go for this one. Next up is Serpent and Dove by Shelby Mahurin. This one is a very popular trilogy that I have not finished yet because I'm the worst, but I am reading book 2 in October, so look out for my review for that one in my October wrap-up coming up soon. But this one is a historical witchy fantasy that takes place in, I think it was the 1600s in France, and it follows a witch who has no choice but to marry a witch hunter after they are seen in some questionable circumstances together. He obviously has no idea that she's a witch, but they do not get along. She's fully aware that he's a witch hunter, and so she hates his guts, understandably. They just can't stand each other. But this one is a romance, so they do end up falling in love over time. It is very much an enemies to lovers kind of thing. The romance in here was incredible. It was so good. And just overall, the plot of it is so much fun. Outside of the romance, there's also some stuff happening with the covens and like the other witches nearby. There is a whole lot happening in this series, and I can't wait to find out where it goes. Next up is Spellbook of the Lost and Found by Moira Fowley-Doyle. I got it. Y'all have no idea how many times it took me to get that name right. I just kept I think that was like 8 or 9 tries. Anyways, this one takes place in a small town in Ireland, and in this town things keep randomly disappearing and reappearing in weird spots, and people have no clue what's going on. But one day a girl finds an old spell book stashed in the hollow of a tree, and she realizes that somebody must have cast a spell but didn't do it properly, and now it's backfiring and affecting the entire town. So this girl finds people who cast the spell, and they have to work together to figure out how to reverse it. So it's a found family story, and it was wonderful. Every page of this book feels like magic. You can just feel it coming off the pages with every single word. It was so beautifully written and atmospheric, and like, this is the perfect fall book. Pardon the pun, but this book really put a spell on me, and I think about it constantly. And the last one for the books that I have read is First Year by Rachel E. Carter, which is the first book in the Black Mage series. I've only read the first book so far, but it was such a good book, and I have no clue why I haven't carried on with it. But either way, this book takes place in a world where when you reach 17, you have to make a choice to either go into some kind of trade, or you can go and study to become either a soldier, a knight, or a mage. Our main character wants to be a mage, and so she goes to the school to go and learn to become one, but she is so bad at it. She has no experience whatsoever, and she's just not the quickest learner. She also comes from a very poor family, whereas everybody else around her is quite wealthy. So she is facing a lot of absolute bullshit from her classmates who very much want to see her fail, and they will do everything in their power to make her fail. But she is so stubborn and determined, and she wants this so badly that she tries her absolute hardest to succeed. She puts her blood, sweat, and tears into learning to become a mage because she wants it that desperately. I loved this book because I feel like the lucky novice trope is so common, where like the main character is just naturally gifted at this. I loved seeing the opposite. The main character has to work really hard, and they're so bad at first, but they gradually get better at it. I feel like we don't see that very often, and so I was so impressed with this book because it had that, and it was different from like other similar books. So this one definitely stood out for me, and it's also a self-published book. Moving on to the books that I have not read, the first one is The Near Witch by V.E. Schwab. I think this is one of her first books that was published. I'm not positive, but this one takes place in the town of Near, and I'm just going to read the like tagline on the back because it really sums it up really nicely. It says, "The Near Witch is only an old story told to frighten children. If the wind calls at night, you must not listen. The wind is lonely and always looking for company. There are no strangers in the town of Near." Those are kind of the main rules that everybody in the town of Near knows, but one day our main character looks outside and sees a stranger standing outside her house at night, and after that I believe children start to vanish, and she has to kind of figure out what's going on. And it's apparently a very creepy, atmospheric kind of read, and it sounds fantastic, so I can't wait to get to this one. I did start it late last month, but I just didn't have time to finish it, and I really want to read it this month, but it's looking like, again, I'm not gonna have time, and I'm so sad about it, but I will read this one like as soon as I can. Next up is The Scapegracers by Hannah Abigail Clarke. Again, I'm just going to read the Goodreads synopsis because it sums it up really nicely. This one says, "An outcast teenage lesbian witch finds her coven and the friend she's always hoped for, hidden amongst the popular girls in her school, and performs some seriously badass magic in the process." This just sounds like a really good time. I've heard a few people talking about it here and there, but like not a whole lot of hype for it, so I'm hoping that I can get to it soon and hopefully love it just as much as like all the people that I've heard talking about it, because it just sounds wonderful, and like queer witches, that's all that I want in the world. Next up is Into the Heartless Wood by Joanne Ruth Meyer. First of all, look at this cover. It's so beautiful. This one sounds really interesting because it has sirens, but they're like tree sirens, which is really interesting. I've never heard of that before. So it sounds like it's going to be a very unique read, but it takes place in a dark, creepy forest, and it's about a witch who feeds souls into the heartless tree. And one day a man comes into the forest, and the witch tells one of her tree siren daughters to go and take his soul, but they end up falling in love, and then things go from there. It sounds like a really interesting like fairy tale kind of story, and I'm so intrigued by the whole concept of it. It just sounds like it's going to be super unique, and I cannot wait to get to it. Okay, it's getting like really dark in here, so pardon the change in lighting, but I'm gonna turn on my overhead light because it's about to like start storming, and so things are dark now. Okay, hopefully that's a bit better. So moving on. The next book on my list is Sweet and Bitter Magic by Adrienne Tooley. This one is a sapphic witch story. This one is about a girl who is cursed to never love, meets another girl who has some kind of dark magical secret, and the two have to team up to save their queendom together. I'm assuming they're going to fall in love, and there's a whole lot of other things happening as well, but that's kind of like the gist of it. I've heard so much hype for this one and so many good reviews. It sounds fantastic. It's also a debut fantasy as well, and I love reading debut authors. And like, look at this this cover is so stunning. I love the colors in it. It's just so gorgeous. Next up is The Witchhaven by Sasha Peyton Smith. This one sounds so good. It's a historical fantasy about a girl whose brother has recently passed away under some very mysterious circumstances, and she wants to figure out what happened to him. But one day while she's working as a seamstress, she's attacked and she ends up murdering a man, but she has no idea how it happened. But before she can be taken in for the murder, two nurses arrive and tell her that she is very ill and has to go to this sanitarium. But when she gets there, she learns that it's actually a school for witches. There is a whole lot more to this story, including like some dark magic that she kind of wants to learn, and a romance with a boy that she sees in her dreams, and like all this really cool stuff. It sounds like such a good time. This one is set in 1911, I think it was. I don't think I've read that much that takes place in that time period, so I think it's going to be a really interesting read, and I can't wait to get to it. Second from last is the Ex Hex by Erin Sterling. This one sounds hilarious. It's another witchy rom-com about a woman who is heartbroken after a breakup, and one drunken night she decides to place a hex on him that she doesn't think will actually work because she uses like a Bath and Body Works candle or something like that. So she doesn't think that anything bad will actually happen to him, but she was incorrect, and now she has to try and figure out how to take the hex off of him before things go really poorly. And I'm not really sure who like the love interest here is. I don't think it's the ex, but I'm not really sure how the love interest comes into play with this one. I'm assuming she like teams up with whoever the love interest is to help her like solve the hex, but I'm not actually positive. But I've heard a lot of great reviews for this one. It sounds super fun, and apparently it's very atmospheric as well. And yeah, there's just been a lot of hype for this one. And finally, the last book on this list is Witch Please by Aguirre, which is the first book in the Fix It Witches series. The Goodreads synopsis says that this one is practical magic meets Gilmore Girls in this adorable witchy rom-com with a bisexual virgin baker with a curse, a witch looking to avoid romantic entanglements, and a chemistry between them that causes literal sparks. This sounds so cute and like so much fun. I'm loving this whole trend of rom-coms with a witchy twist to them. I'm like living for it. This is fantastic. I kind of want to go into this one blind, so I'm not going to look farther into the synopsis for it, but it sounds adorable and hilarious, and like it's going to be a really good time, so I can't wait for this one as well. And those are all of my witch books that I have to talk about today. Please let me know if you have any more recommendations. I am always looking for a good witch story. Bonus points if they're queer, obviously. But in the meantime, happy Halloween, everybody. I hope you enjoyed my mini series of recommendations for all the spooky reads to get you in the mood for the Halloween season. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you're having a fantastic day wherever you are in the world, and I will catch you in the next video. Bye! Next up is Spellbook of the Lost and Found by Moira Fowley-Doyle. What? Moira Fowley-Doyle. Moira Fowley-Doyle? God damn it. By Moira Fowley-Doyle. God damn it. By Moira Fowley-Doyle. Moira Fowley-Doyle. Moira Fowley-Doyle. Jesus Christ.